Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. There's a buzzword that is consistent with the best entrepreneurs, self-starter. Someone who can look at a problem they want to solve or a project they want to tackle and say, I can do that. Our guest is someone who completely embodies that sense of determination and can-do spirit. It's what turned him from techie to self-taught cook and baker to now founder of his own culinary experiences group. Please welcome my fellow Ohioan friend, founder of North Coast Culinary Group, Logan Neisel. Logan, hi.
Namaste. How are you? How are you doing today?
I'm great. I get to chat with you. It's a beautiful fall day in Columbus. You're up in Cleveland. We need to finally meet in person. I love meeting fellow Ohioans who love food.
Absolutely. Definitely. That drive's not too far. And I know Columbus is a quite growing scene, so it's lovely down there. But yeah, I would love to have you up here in Cleveland too.
Yeah, you guys are growing. I mean, you guys have so many amazing folks, including yourself. I can't wait for everyone to hear your story and all the things you're working on. So let's take things back to the beginning here. When did you first fall in love with food? What were your favorite foods as a kid growing up? What was eating really like in your household?
Sure. So growing up, food for us was more sustenance than it was like an art form or creativity side of things. I can't necessarily say that I grew up in a foodie household, so to speak. I can say, though, that food was an opportunity for my family to come together every night. My parents made sure that we had a family meal. A lot of times that was kind of a meat and potatoes kind of dish, but they made sure that we took the time to get together and actually have that. So I'd say my own kind of passion or love for food really just started recently. I've only been cooking for, I'd say, the last 2 years or so. And so while it's a very recent kind of passion, it's definitely one that has been an intense burning fire. And so I love what I'm doing now. And while it wasn't necessarily something I expected, it's absolutely rewarding and something that I'm thriving in now.
I mean, for real, no one would believe that you've only been cooking for 2 years based on what they see online, what they taste in person. It's just absolutely incredible. You have art on the plate for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I do try to, I think, because I didn't spend a lot of time in the food industry, I think that I have a different way of going about things, or can maybe have a lot of curveballs that come out.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear that that actually comes through, and that it's not just somebody throwing ideas on the plate, that it actually is a cohesive thought, and that you can kind of see the way that I'm trying to get things across.
Yeah. And sometimes you test, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. And it's like you said, all about just trying and getting it out there. Tell us a little bit about what brought you here today. What was your career journey like before food? What really inspired you to make a change?
Sure. I had gone to college with the idea of getting out, getting into the corporate world and living that life for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
I graduated with a degree in psychology and came out with a minor in HR as well. So recruitment became the profession that I got into. While I was there, I was actually recruiting people for tech jobs, people in IT, people in financial tech. And after looking at some of the job descriptions and definitely after seeing some of the salaries, I thought, maybe that might be a little more lucrative than what I've got going on. So a lot of it was self-taught. And as long as you're a self-learner and you're able to develop your skill set, getting into tech was something that was available for a lot of people. So I did the homework and did the research, taught myself Excel, got into a new company where I was able to kind of build out the business intelligence unit, and got into management through that. So I got to a point where, being in the tech salary, it was really easy to just get DoorDash every single day.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago, like I said, it became a thing where I was doing it so often that I said, you know what, this has to be a New Year's resolution. I've got to buckle down here, get more disciplined, and start cooking more at home. Not out of a desire to get into culinary world, but just more so to avoid eating the fast food that's pinging me every night at 7:00.
Yes.
So I started doing that, and within a month, I was complaining to my boss at the time about the kinds of foods that I was cooking. I only really knew how to make chicken and rice and bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, very basic things. And she turned me on to Julia Child's The Art of French Cooking. And that
Oh,
cookbook for me was a really big eye opener for me. The first two chapters of that book don't even go over recipes, don't talk about memorizing ingredients, which is what I had always assumed that cooking was, just more so like training yourself on flashcards or playing chess more so than having some kind of creativity in it.
yeah.
But the first two chapters of that book deal with the economy of the kitchen, how to source all of your tools, what kind of materials you need, what they do, and why they're important, as well as looking at ingredients, understanding what an acid does versus a fat versus your proteins. And that for me was kind of catalyst or the aha moment of, oh, what I'm doing in my day job, this very analytical, like sit back and think about things, is actually very similar to what people are doing in the food world and in the culinary world. You have this idea that you want to see, but you also have a set of rules or parameters that you work within. And so you are creative within the box and able to kind of, what's the word I want to look for? Follow a beaten path, but still be creative while on it.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun. And because of those parallels, I kind of picked up cooking very quickly. And it just became, like I said, a resolution that turned into a side project and a hobby and then a hustle. And now, like you said, is my full-time job.
Incredible. And in just such a short time, too. It's almost like you got that spark of you're using one side of your brain, right? You're pragmatic, you're analytical, you're focused on data. And then you saw, well, what happens when you combine that with artistry and the culinary arts and feeling like you can take your creativity to a whole other level. So it sounds like it just really, like it was like a really poignant moment thanks to Julia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, it was something that I wasn't really expecting. I didn't realize that I had this kind of like right brain itch that was going on. But as soon as
Oh,
we started feeding that fire and building up from that initial inspiration or spark that we had, it definitely has just taken off from there. So a lot of fun. And
yeah. Did you ever grow up like, were you ever artistic as a kid? Did you ever do anything in those different fields that you feel like led you to how you create today?
so I sang in school, so I can't necessarily say that that translates over per se, but I can say that there's always been a desire to be creative. Even whenever I was in my analytics role, a lot of what I was trying to do was focus on the front end, the appearance of the
Yes.
dashboards and the way that the information would be consumed, because I knew that communicating things through the visual is a very important part, both of data analytics and now of the culinary side of the world that I'm in. And so figuring out how that spark kind of moved from one medium to another was
Yeah.
really the kind of driver behind that.
That is so cool. It's like you took UI, user interface, and you applied it to the plate, which I don't know if I've really ever heard that before. That's such an interesting way of thinking about things.
It's a lot of fun. And I think the blend of art and science is where I like to sit. I think if it was all right brain, I probably wouldn't. I'd be itching for some
Yeah.
of those numbers and some of the business aspect side of things. But on the flip side of things, we definitely saw what happened once I finally did get some of that creativity. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with the kind of balance that I've got going right now.
Yeah, I feel that too. I recognized that once I went from lifestyle journalism, where I wasn't helping with publishing in that sense of understanding numbers or subscribers when I was in print publishing. But once I got into startups, it was really nice that I could see, oh, you can have style and substance together. You can't have just aesthetics and you can't have just data. There are a lot of us who like to work with both sides of our brain. So it helps a lot when you get it all in balance, like you said. When did you decide to fully quit corporate tech and start North Coast? What was that aha moment? How long were you thinking, I think I'm actually going to go be an entrepreneur in a space that I've never really tackled before?
Sure. I had been doing small private events, like just, for friends and for acquaintances and things like that. I, through that, had started to feel like maybe there was a next level to that beyond just doing it at a hobby level. So I reached out to a few chefs in Chicago
Mm.
and was able to go and stage with them. So both Esme and Boca, both
What?
amazing.
Oh my
So
God.
just, yeah,
You
two
stuck
great,
to
great.
Boca?
Yes,
Look at you.
Yeah, they were very kind to allow me to come in and understand the way that they work. Obviously, you come in and you chop a lot of vegetables as a stage. You're not necessarily, doing most crazy things that they do at amazing restaurants like that. But what I was able to do was really get in and understand the operating models that both of those businesses had, knowing that Esme works with a team of 4 to 6, very small, very kind of scrum or like agile kind of methodology. Whereas you look at some of Boca, which is an established institution with 2 to 3 times as many employees at a time, you
Yeah.
see a kind of shake or a shift in the way that the mindset works. And I kind of realized that there's a lot of different right ways to manage a restaurant. And so getting to see that, understanding the managerial kind of operation side of the house by actually being baptized in fire and experiencing it myself taught me or showed me that some of the managerial skill that I picked up in analytics might actually translate over here. Like I said, meeting with Esme and seeing the way that they all work together as a team, or every individual person has a big contribution to the end result, was a very familiar thing for me working in small tech teams. And
Yes.
so as soon as I realized that, oh, there's a lot of transferable skills here and that I shouldn't be doubting my ability to move into another industry, it became a very easy thing to kind of let go of the corporate world and say, okay, let's dedicate all of this time, both right brain and left brain, to the cooking side of things.
Yes. The way you speak about it too, I swear that by the end of this episode, we're going to have so many people from tech converted to entering the culinary field because they're like, oh, yeah, I get how you think. Now, talk to us about the difficulties of going into a kitchen like Esme or Boca. Again, like you said, totally different environments, but a different set of challenges than you were working with before. What were you feeling at first when you were in that level? Not only that level of skill set amongst those folks. I mean, we're talking James Beard nominations, Michelin stars, many awards here, but that feverish feeling that folks tend to describe when you're back there.
It was an absolute rush. I'd say, like anybody that's going to something that they feel is well above their skill set, I showed up an hour early. I'm pacing outside. I've got all of my knives, making sure they're nice and shiny and ready to go. Over prepared was definitely the mantra that I went with there. I wanted to make sure that I gave them no reason to not want to have me come in. But what I realized very quickly was the speed and the precision that goes into executing as a cook on a day-to-day basis was by and far well beyond what I could teach myself in a home kitchen. So, for me, I chop one onion a day. And so it's very easy to slow down and make sure you get perfectly square brunoise out of those vegetables. But when you go into another arena where, you're feeding 30 plus people
Yeah.
multi-course dinners every single night, or even more than that on the Boca side,
Oh, yeah.
you're in how you scale up that skill set, whether it's by just improving your technique or by bringing in a larger team and more employees to help tackle that workload, was something that I really picked up, and something that I said, like, well, this is new. This isn't necessarily something that I see in all restaurants. Even if, as I come back to Cleveland, I think it's something that's kind of unique to that fine dining or the kind of Michelin star style cooking. And it's definitely something that I said, I've got to make sure that I bring this back with me.
Amazing. And then, like you said, it's that butterfly effect. You try one thing here and then you can see where it happens elsewhere and it's just spreading. And so you're bringing that level of high quality elsewhere. And I always like to hear that there are other city, love Chicago till I die, one of my favorite food cities, of course, but I want people to understand that the Midwest is not just flyover states, that we've got people who are doing incredible food here and that you should stop and actually make it a destination. So you were doing some studying at home. You were testing with friends and family. You were judging. So it's almost like your internship, your apprenticeship. Was there anything else that you were doing to research and study to get yourself to the level that you did so quickly in terms of your skill set?
So for the first year, almost year and a half, I didn't spend a dime trying to learn what I was doing. Obviously, you got to pay for your ingredients, but I
Yep.
was also eating those, so it worked out at the end. But a lot of free resources exist out there. YouTube, obviously, is one of the
Nice.
biggest ones. There's a number of chefs that are regularly putting out content who are very, very open with the way that they're doing things. It's not just following a recipe, but really understanding techniques and learning how to then apply those techniques to your own cooking. So I'd say that being able to just drink from the fire hose of information that is the internet and being used to bringing in big data and analyzing that level of information kind of both came together into a kind of, what do you want to say, like the hyperbaric time chamber from Dragon Ball Z, where I felt like I was just spending every single day focused on food, and I was able to spend 48 hours a day just looking at different things and coaching and reading, doing the research and watching as many videos as I could. So it ended up with me going to a point where I started putting together a weekly menu. So I lived across the street from where I worked, so it was convenient enough for me to come home for lunch. And so 5 days a week, both for lunch and dinner, I would make something new that I hadn't made before to challenge myself, whether that was using a new ingredient that I'd never heard of, or taking an existing ingredient and seeing how a new culture or a new cuisine kind of works with that. Those were, I'd say, it was a lot of fun. It got me out of the meat and potatoes mindset that I had before. I tried vegetables I had never heard of simply because I had never seen them before and wanted to see what it was like to try winter melon and things like that. So once we started to get the ball rolling with that, it became an addiction of, okay, how many different cuisines can I try? How many different techniques can I find? How many different vegetables are in Ohio that I can actually pull? And that kind of led me to a fun fact that I realized, and I think is maybe a misconception that you have about things from the Midwest, is that we have to import a lot of the foods that we get from like the coasts or things like that. But through a lot of the digging that I've done and just from my own living, there's just so much farmland out here. There's so many people that are doing so many amazing things. You've got the Chef's Garden here in Ohio that is an amazing source of vegetables and ingredients for restaurants all over. You've got just countless different kind of entrepreneurs that are working to build out the food network here and build it in a way that is not just built around the commercial side of things, because the Midwest has been skipped over in a nice way in that kind of commercial set. So it's, for me, growing up, we always went to the local butcher. That local butcher is still supporting our hometown. Cleveland has a lot of local butchers in the area who are working with small farmers, or in some cases, the farm owners themselves, to provide those kinds of ingredients. So I'm never want for high quality things. And the amount of ingredients that I can get locally are surprising to me, not just from the meat and potatoes side of the world, but even fruits like pawpaw, which I don't necessarily think a lot of people realize. It's a tropical fruit. It's native to Ohio. If you put the seed in the ground, it grows because it's supposed to be here. And so I saw this, I eat it. I'm like, this tastes just like a tropical fruit. And I think about, well, we've got Lake Erie here, and walleye is like one of the kind of hidden gems of, I'd say, like the Great Lakes or the Midwest cuisine. It's a white fish that is native to the Great Lakes and has a beautiful, delicious flavor. So as soon as I thought about these two things, I'm like, oh, I can do like a tropical fish dish using only ingredients from Ohio. But I can put like a Puerto Rican spin on it, use Puerto Rican vegetables or Puerto Rican spices to kind of make it feel like you're having that Caribbean kind of cuisine. But then, oh, surprise, actually everything that you're having is local and very fresh and didn't have to travel halfway around the world to get to your plate.
Holy cow. I just learned so much in everything you just said. And it just shows you're such a sponge that you love learning, and it's paying off. I mean, like you said, Chef's Garden, other amazing local farmers. I think people think of the Midwest, they think of people like my family's farm, where it's like for corn and soybean production, which is needed, but we do have so many fresh local producers. I was just thinking about it earlier today. There was a stat that came out that now like 86% of meals that people are eating are home cooked right now, just because of how expensive things are, inflation plus tariffs plus everything else going on. So it's awesome that you researched and now highlighted people who are local so that we can say, okay, great, let me figure out how to support them. And then I'm eating in a way that feels intuitive. It's seasonal, it's fresh, and like you said, it's super creative. It doesn't have that sense of feeling like, oh, I'm just in the middle of farmland. Like,
Sure, yeah, and I think it's fun too to kind of remind.
But you know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Boil them and stick them in a stew, right? There's always different ways to do that. But I think that the fun part about being in the Midwest is being able to, like you said, remind people of some of the things that we have available here.
Yeah.
We have access to both coasts. So for me, a lot of what I do is I blend Italian and Japanese cooking together. Those are kind of the two that I've landed on. And I try to do it with some of the local Ohio or like local ingredients that I have available to me. So it's convenient to be here in the middle. We can very easily get shipments and things over from like the Japan and the China area through customs and then obviously over to here. And then anything from Italy or anything that I need from Europe is available through New York. So yeah, we landed in a nice place for access to things like that.
Yes. And I'm excited for food supply chains to just get even better. There's some folks we've had on the podcast who are working on this. And I just feel like it's nice to talk about these things because even though things feel very difficult right now, especially when it comes to food, agriculture, hospitality, and the challenges that are faced, that so many people want a better future in those areas that it's like we're just kind of working through the slog. And I think we can get through. I think we can all recognize that food from the earth, food from our areas in the seasons, we can all be really creative with it. And I feel like the top chefs say this too. It's always just like simple is best, right? Like, yes, you can add some really interesting spices to something, but just keeping a few ingredients in a dish, you can do something really special.
Definitely. And I think that's something too that kind of echoes across the Italian, the Japanese, and the Ohio things where it's, the food is amazing. If you put in the time to put it together and you keep it local and you get it fresh and in season, really all you have to do is just get it to the plate without screwing it up. And so a lot of the style of cooking that I'm trying to do is
I can screw up pretty badly sometimes if I'm just not paying attention.
Oh yeah, no, that's why not everything makes it to Instagram, right? So no, but it's a lot of fun to be able to find those ingredients and then to take a recipe and say, okay, I've got all of these ideas. I'm new. So a lot of what I'm trying to do is figure out like how many different things can I jam pack into this one dish. But then I take a step back and I remember my roots and the two cuisines that I really pull from. And it's less about what can you add to the plate and how much can you take away before you lose the core of what you see there. And so while a lot of what I do maybe starts out as like a hectic plate with a lot of different components all together, by the time it actually makes it to one of my ticketed events or any of my private chef courses that I do, it's been refined, it's been dialed back. And really what I try to get across is just those few flavors or those few techniques that I really want to showcase and make sure that they don't get lost in the hustle and bustle of everything else that's going on there.
Yeah, you edited it down so that people aren't going to get too overwhelmed and they can focus on whatever the stars that you want to have in that particular moment.
Right.
So
Definitely.
Speaking of Instagram, this is how you and I met. I was scrolling and it was somehow recommended to me. I stopped in my tracks of scrolling when I saw your beautiful shortbread cookies with isomalt in them and these edible flowers. It looked like the most beautiful, like stained glass cookie I've ever seen. What did you find inspired you to also be working on pastry at the same time? So some people tend to lean into one side or the other. What made you say, I'm actually going to master all of these at the same time?
So I can't even say that it was a goal or something that I intrinsically made an executive thought to actually go and do that. For me, food is an art form.
Yeah.
And so whatever kind of form it needs to take is ultimately what I try to do. So for the shortbread cookies that you're talking about, I call them my Canestrelli Finestra or window shortbread cookies. That idea came about from a trip that I took to the Cleveland Museum of Art. There, they have an amazing exhibit of Tiffany glass, which was a really big innovator in the glass space in the turn of the century, early 1920s, kind of Gilded era. It was a hallmark of kind of Cleveland's creativity. And so I'm looking at that and I'm going online and I'm looking at all of these old Northern Italian ingredients and all of these old recipes. And I come across the recipe from the 1500s for these little shortbread cookies. And they've got a little hole in the middle. Yeah, that's the fun part about what I try to do is the farther back I go, you start to realize like there's a lot of food that has just been left to kind of decay in the corners of time. And so as much as I try to dig in and kind of understand the history of where I'm at, I try to understand the history of the cuisines that I'm pulling from too. And so for that cookie, I saw this opening in the middle. I saw a window And what goes in a window but glass? And so I spent some time trying to understand, like, what can I do to make this happen? I knew that stunt glass was edible or something like that. So I spent some time digging into it and came across the isomalt setup and the whole sugar crystallization temperatures and things like that. We practiced until it finally came together. And sure enough, the idea had enough legs to actually come out in reality. So I'm super happy with the end result. But it was never a case of, oh, I want to make a shortbread cookie with this kind of thing, or this was my end goal. I just knew that I had this kind of this artistry or this kind of artisan skill set that I was really proud of from my local area. And this really antiquated recipe that isn't being modernized by anybody, and putting them together kind of allowed it to be something new, but also something familiar as well. And I think that has been a hallmark, or something that I really want to push into my dishes, is that, yeah, while I might have like a modern kind of presentation to things, a lot of the flavors or the techniques that I pull from it's the same old school flavors that you get whenever you go to Italy and you have your traditional pastas, or you go to Japan and you have your ramen. So a lot of fun to see those things manifest in food, but even sometimes I don't know where they're going to go or what they're going to end up being.
This is incredible. So how did you even find that recipe? What resources are you using to go back that far? I don't think I've ever, outside of Norman Van Aken, I don't know if I've ever heard someone who really loves to go back that far in history to get inspiration for ideas like that.
I had realized that the farther back I go, the more isolated different cultures and cuisines become from each other, especially if you go pre-Columbian. Because I'm like, what was Italian cuisine like before tomatoes? It's such a hallmark of what they do.
Yeah.
And so in that, I started digging into understanding, the way that pasta even started. Where did that come from? And it became almost like a challenge to myself to say, like, how deep can I go? How far back can I go? And what was interesting to me was the farther back that I went, the more alike and more parallels I saw between different cuisines with Italian cuisine. If you go all the way back to Roman times, you're seeing a lot of kind of preserved meats or salted meats that use some kind of a bacteria or some kind of a fungus to help to keep them food safe and allow them to be stored. You go to Japan, you see a very similar thing happening. The kind of bacteria that they're using is definitely different. You've got koji going on over there versus like your yeasts and your Roccaforte bacteria is going on in Italy. But the idea of having these kind of aged, preserved deli meats or katsuobushi style kind of things is a central part of both cuisines. And so, like I said, the farther back you go, the more that you start to get to just the raw kind of form of that culture or of that cuisine, and you see what they were doing before they got influenced by other people. And by seeing that kind of unmitigated or that unadulterated cuisine, you can see maybe what they're doing isn't necessarily unique. It's unique to their area, but it's not unique around the world. And so as we've now gotten past that pre-Columbian, now we're post-Columbian, obviously everybody's eating tomatoes all around the world. We've got now, with the rise of the internet, globalism happening. I think that what we're starting to see is some of those unique things can be, again, lost to time or just lost in the shuffle of all of the communication that can now happen. I mean, I can get on the phone and talk with somebody from Italy and with no problem. That makes it a lot harder for me to develop something completely independently from other people. And so being able to go back in time, identifying those independent things and those things that really made each cuisine kind of unique, I think is a lot of fun. It's some of that detective work. And then as you start to come forward in time, you start to realize like, oh, mantecotta is a very core component of Italian cooking, that the way that they build their pasta sauces. That has stayed the same all throughout time. The ingredients might have changed, but the technique is what has continued to move on. And so as we get into globalism and people start worrying about like, how does my culture continue to survive in this new era? Going back to those things that have been the core of what has existed since it began. I think it's a solid kind of plan in a way that people can kind of maybe see some pieces of what they're doing modernized, but still know that what they're doing is going to be recognized by their ancestors and people who came before them.
Yes, there's a huge sense of heritage that you're putting into the cuisine and honoring it in a lot of ways. And also, PSA, this is a call for libraries. This is a call for LexisNexis. Like, if you want amazing resources like Logan uses, then we need to support these things, because I imagine you started here and then you could go down a rabbit hole of all these incredible resources out there to figure this out instead of, someone was saying just this week to me, like, it's good to have creativity and different sources of inspiration because if we all just pulled from social media or the algorithm every time, like we'd all just be making the same viral feta pasta over and over again. And
Right.
then there wouldn't be just the sense of just something so inspirational like you're doing. So cool. Truly. I'm learning a lot. Thank you. I love nerding out over this. This is
Well,
amazing.
this is absolutely the analytic side of things. It's now been manifested in food is trying to understand the environment I'm in and what box I'm playing in, right? So if I'm going to be leveraging a lot of Italian and Japanese techniques and a lot of their cuisine, I want to make sure that I'm respectful and that an Italian who's watching me cook can be proud of what I'm making and not see it as a corruption of what they're doing, but really just an extension of what they're doing, maybe a reimagination of it or a retranslation because it's, well, I'm not in Italy, I'm an American.
Yep.
And so I have a different way of doing things. But ultimately, I want to be able to pay homage to the things that came before me and make sure that what I'm doing is standing on top of giants and not trying to recreate the wheel, do something out on my own.
I think that folks are going to look to you soon. Like they probably already are because you're just thinking in such an interesting way. Tell us about when you officially started North Coast. When was the launch? What offerings did you start with? Were you doing these edited menus? Are you focusing mostly on ticketed events or a little bit more on the private side of things?
Sure. So North Coast Culinary came about at the beginning of this year, actually. So it's a very, very young LLC. For the first couple of months, it was a fancy way to just say myself, but we have since been able to grow. I've been able to bring on a number of people to help.
My goodness.
Have been able to start developing their skill sets and gotten back into that managerial role that I really enjoyed whenever I was in tech. So what we've been focusing on largely are doing small plate, kind of fine dining style multi-course dinners. If that is something that can happen in somebody's private residence, I love to do that. However, I do really love the draw of being in an environment that is kind of set up for that fine dining kind of feel. You've got the atmosphere when you come in, you're like, oh, wow, this is a beautiful place. And then the food that comes out should be just as beautiful as the atmosphere, and the service should just mirror all of that. So for me, I really enjoy doing the pop-ups, going to different places around the city and being able to bring my cuisine in different formats and at different price points to different groups of people. But I also won't shy away from doing the private course dinners as well. At the end of the day, I do want to make sure that this isn't just an art form, that it is a business that I'm able to maintain, and definitely working with private clients is something that we've found to be a great way to find that balance between the art and the business side of things.
Yes. So speaking of business, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in this last year alone in terms of how food operations work? So very different types of margins than coming from software.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're learning about the 30-30-30 rule was something, and not being able to just sell a license, actually having to recreate the dish for each individual person, I think was a challenge that I didn't fully appreciate until we got to the point of scaling it beyond just a handful of people and trying to bring in other people. Some of the dishes that I do or that I do on my own, it's a labor of love, so it can take a long time, or I can have a lot of individual mini parts. When we go to a point of scaling that up to working with others, there's space limitations and skill set training that needs to happen before things can make it to that next level. So building the connections within the industry, I think it was one of the things that I expected to be a major challenge. And while it's always difficult to get out there, I mean, I started in software and in tech, we've got a personality type that kind of works well in there. And we're not necessarily the ones that are out knocking on everybody's doors, talking all the time to lots of different people. But getting that mentality and getting into that mindset of building my network and learning where I can go to ask questions was a big thing. I'd say that especially in Cleveland, we've got a group of young chefs who kind of have this undercurrent where we're really trying to see not just one person be successful in our market, but really push the Cleveland market into that next level of saying, like, we are a foodie area. Here's what we're doing. And here's a whole host of chefs that are all kind of part of that.
Yes.
It's something that I was able to tap in very early on. And I can't say enough good things about the people here in Cleveland. The support that I've gotten from existing chefs, people who have been doing the pop-up circuit themselves, all the way up to people who have 3 to 4 restaurants and multiple James Beard nominations. Everybody is so humble and so willing to take the time to talk with new people, explain how they did what they did, and also caution about the pitfalls that they fall into. And so the sense of community that I found here and the amount of support really that just comes from the Cleveland market is, while it was originally something that I saw as a challenge, has become almost a driving factor behind why I'm staying here in Cleveland and why I want to do food here. I've been to New York, I've been to Chicago, and you definitely have there's some competition that can happen in established markets, but because we're new and because everybody here kind of wants to get out of that crab in a bucket mentality, you see a lot more humility and willingness to reach across the aisle and a lot of collaborations that happen, and both with chefs, but also with distributors. I've met distributors who have put me in contact with other people because they thought we had similar mindsets. And so just being able to leverage the people aspect of the Midwest and that Midwest nice mentality is definitely something that has turned what should be a challenge into almost a kind of an asset for me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's this misconception that people have about hospitality is, oh, a chef must be mean and yelling and just be a perfectionist. And truly, I don't know how many of those people I've come across anymore. I think that culture has changed so much. It is the group of the nicest, hardest working people in the world, I think. And so it's nice to hear, especially too in Cleveland, that everyone's just trying to lift each other up. We've got we've got your peer Vinny Semino over at Cordelia, who just got named Best New Chef by Food and Wine this last week. What are some of the other partners that you're working with or have worked with?
Sure. So there's a strong effort to revitalize the downtown area of Cleveland. And so in doing so, I've been able to partner with a hospitality group that is looking to create a new cocktail lounge. And what I'm doing now is kind of menu consultation for this group. So while I'm not there cooking on the day-to-day, what I am able to do is work with them to figure out, you're going into this Playhouse Square area, you're looking to revitalize, you're shaking the rust off of the Rust Belt.
Yes.
Do you want to see what's underneath there? Do you want to just completely erase what was there before and build new? Or would you rather just leverage what has been here before and build on the bones of what existed before? And so this group is very much in the mentality of Cleveland has its heritage and it has its history, and we want to be able to bring that forward. And so the dishes that I'm helping them with are things like a Buckeye candy, a peanut butter chocolate kind of dessert that I've shaped into a cigar to bring it into kind of the Gilded Age kind of cocktail lounge kind of experience. We've got cassata cake, which is a Sicilian dessert that has been adapted to the Cleveland area. So we've got our own version of it where we use different ingredients, things that are available to us locally here. And so through the research and through learning what we had available, I said, this would be an awesome thing to be able to show off. There's a handful of kind of staple businesses in our little Italy here that have cassata cake, but there's no one downtown that's doing it. So being able to pull that history and show it off and update the visual so that it's small and pretty and sexy and fits what everybody wants out of their modern food is a lot of fun. So.
Yes. I mean, you recently posted on your Instagram this panna cotta in the shape of a bust, like you used a mold or something. Truly your food is art. It's just so insane. And
Very fun.
did you find that you had to practice with your platings and with your presentation to get it to the level it's at, or did that come pretty naturally to you? Because you're also great at just how you even present it on Instagram. It's very clean.
I appreciate that. I think a lot of the corporate environment that I've worked in, I did analytics for a marketing team. So I was very aware of how the visual was supposed to be. I understand the 30, 45-degree angles and the sweeping shots and how to pull that together. So I'd say a lot of that kind of visual impact or that side of things has come from my tech career, as randomly or as maybe unintuitively as that seems. But when we get down to the individual presentations, the panna cotta bust, for instance, we have a painting in the Cleveland Museum of Art that was also recreated in Playhouse Square. It's a painting of a muse named Arato. She's a Greek muse of lyrical poetry. I saw her showing up in 2 different places in Cleveland, 2 of the places that I really consider to be the cultural epicenters of our city. And I thought there's got to be a way to bring her into my cooking. I love panna cotta. I realized that there are older recipes for panna cotta that don't use gelatin, that use like egg whites as their stabilizer.
Ooh, really? Okay,
And
good to know.
in doing that, using egg whites actually allows you to bypass some of the limitations of gelatin, which would be like freezing and unmolding and still being able to hold the shape.
Yes.
So I'm thinking and I'm seeing I've got this muse. She's bouncing around in my head. I don't know where she's going to land. I've got this panna cotta recipe that I learned, oh, I can shape into different things. I've got the idea of, Roman sculptures and trying to bring some kind of other artisan skill set into my cooking. And it all culminated in that panna cotta bust or the muse dessert that I do. So it's a lot of fun. That panna cotta kind of central bust is the major piece that doesn't change. But then around it, we have two different sauces. One is like a confit and the other is a simple syrup. And the flavors of those change over time as we go through the different seasons. So as we get into spring, you're seeing strawberries and rhubarbs. As we get into winter, you're seeing more like ocean dark cherry. So it adapts and I'm able to adjust it over time to be seasonal. But the kind of central motif or the underlying kind of presentation still is able to hold firm.
Incredible. What are some of your other favorite dishes and menus that you've done for events so far?
So the dishes that I'm most proud of are the ones that take an artisan craft from one of my influences and reimagines them as food. So we talked about the glass, being able to take glassworks and turn that into an edible thing. Origami is another one that I was really interested in. I said, we've got all of these pasta shapes that exist. I'm seeing people through 3D printed pasta. Surely there's got to be an intermediary step between, annulati and 3D printed shapes. And after doing some tinkering with different pasta formulas and different hydration ratios, we finally got to one that had a texture that allowed me to fold it and for those folds to stay sharp. And so
Wow.
I was able to start turning sheets of lasagna pasta into little origami ducks and little swans and things like that. So very quickly, the idea came together of, oh, I need to do a duck lasagna dish and have this little origami duck sitting in the middle of it. So what I ended up doing was the dish itself was served in a pasta dish. The bottom layer was a ragu that was made with duck. We had a layer of pasta then to separate that from the bechamel layer above. The bechamel was forte, but I dyed it blue with butterfly pea flower so that when the duck would sit in the middle of the bechamel, it would look like a duck floating on the pond. And then we sold that idea by using pecorino that we blitzed with parsley and thyme and a lot of Italian herbs. And we sprinkled that around the outside. So at the end, what you had was a duck sitting on a pond. But once you eat it, you go, oh, this is Italian food.
Oh
But
my
you look
God.
at it and you go, this is Japanese techniques and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. It was blending a lot of different things together. It brought, an artisan craft from Japan into the culinary world of Italy, but did it with ingredients that we sourced from here in America. We've got duck farms that I was able to source things from very conveniently. And so that is one dish that I'd say is kind of a hallmark for what I want to do, where I take different influences that have common ground and really find that common ground and dig into it and figure out how can I show the relationship that exists between these two kind of disparate ideas or these two kind of disparate philosophies.
I bet people are almost scared to dive in because it's so beautiful. That is so cute.
It is
I've
a lot
never
of fun.
heard of
Thank
that.
you.
I've just never heard of someone thinking, let me color a bechamel with not food coloring and do a whole scene like that. So
Yeah.
I'm sure people are taking pictures and helping share all the time to help spread the word for you.
Definitely. And that has been one of the big things starting out by just posting on Instagram and working my way into it. I've always wanted to make sure that my food was going to have that kind of Instagrammable aspect to it. So yeah, I want the food to look as good as it's going to taste. I never want to oversell something. Like you will never see me try to overdress a plate that is not going to have that kind of flavor. I don't want to just be the all spark and no sizzle.
Right.
But definitely whenever I find the recipes and I can rely on some tried and true formulas for flavor profiles, I don't want to just let those come out as a home style plate. I want to be able to elevate the visual side of things to match the flavor and to match the culture and the history and the elegance that went into that.
I was going to say,
Things.
yeah, you're doing it with elegance too. This is not some kitschy, trendy, like giant. You remember there was that period where it was like the milkshakes with like 7 different desserts on top of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, like great viral moment for that type of brand, like not going to knock that, but you're doing it on the fine dining level in a way that, we can look back to folks like Grant at Alinea and everything he was doing back then. You're taking essentially molecular gastronomy, I should say, and you're bringing it. There must be, yours is truly like art. I don't know. I can't just say culinary arts. There's got to be a new term that you're almost creating in the moment when you are thinking on this level.
I really appreciate it. At the end of the day, it all gets eaten and it all goes away. So, well, we put a lot of fun into it, and we can always kind of talk about all the thought that does go into it. At the end of the day, my goal is, like with anybody that is cooking, is to ultimately give that amazing experience to the guests and make sure that they walk away with what they expected. For me, I love to be able to communicate that thought that I have about being able to preserve things and to use food as an art form to preserve and kind of showcase artisan talents and artisan
Yeah.
skills from my different influences. But if my guests aren't interested in the kind of flavors that I'm putting out, I will absolutely figure out what I can do to make sure that I'm meeting my guests where they expect to be.
Well, I'm sure every plate is still looks clean.
We definitely don't have a problem with that. Our dishwashers are definitely happy. Our plongers are definitely happy whenever the plates come back clean. So it's a great time.
Amazing. What do you think is next? I mean, you've grown quite quickly in terms of the ticketed events you've done, these private events. You've got more coming up for the rest of the year. Do you ever see yourself growing into a brick and mortar space of your own? Or what do you think is the trajectory that you'd like to take this on?
The more that I do the pop-up circuit and the more that I get acclimated with the market and build up my own audience, the more I see brick and mortar as an inevitable thing on the horizon.
Yeah.
What I love about pop-ups is the flexibility of being able to go somewhere new and take in new inspiration and have all these ideas, but the consistency that comes with having your own space and being able to set it up in a way that's going to be conducive to your cooking is really what I crave. I've done 12-course dinners in restaurants that don't have stoves or really hood vents or anything like that. So not having to be creative about the menu and just being able to have that space dedicated is really what I'm after. But I do think that as I look forward, the idea is not just to stay in a brick and mortar here in Cleveland and isolate myself. I'd love to be able to take what I'm doing and go out to some of the bigger tier cities, go to Chicago, like some of my contemporaries are doing. We've got Jeremy Umansky here that's going to Charlie Trotter's and doing a dinner based on the Koji research that he is a master of.
Amazing.
I'd love to be able to kind of follow that, take what I'm doing and what do you want to say, almost cross-pollinate with other mid-tier cities and even take it to the big cities and say, we may be small, but we are mighty. And the things that we're doing here are unique and should definitely be taken not for granted.
Yeah, it's nice that you can do a little bit of a road show if you go and collaborate at some of these other restaurants or a pop-up or even festivals. I could see you at maybe a food and wine or something in the future, showing off what you're doing so that folks can say, okay, great. And the home is Cleveland, like you said. So we'll see how fast your empire grows. I have a feeling that it will go as quickly as you want it to because you're so good at just pushing things forward and getting it out there.
I appreciate it. No, it's a labor of love. And, while the hours that I'm working are definitely more than I was doing in tech, working for myself and the feeling of fulfillment that I have when I'm doing both the art and the business side of things is well worth the sacrifices and well worth the transition.
You should be so proud of everything you're doing. Like, you're just such a light too. You can tell how much you love this. And I think that's always going to make people gravitate to you. It's always going to make whatever you're working on then a success.
It is easy to come in with bright eyes when you haven't spent 10, 12 years working your way up through things. If you talk to me about tech, I've got a very different jaded kind of opinion, but I'm definitely in the food industry. I'm new. And so I still have kind of that wonder that goes about it. And I still see plates that people are putting out and I'm not worried about, what's the price point on this or how many seats are they able to get that sold to a night? I just see the artwork and I'm like, what is happening here is beautiful. How can I kind of distill this into my own style or how can I make sure that other people are aware of what's going on here?
Yeah. And when you're in an industry, a brand, a project, a personal mission that feels much more aligned to your core, I think that yes, you're going to experience hard times. You're going to experience exhaustion, especially the industry you're working, a lot of physical exhaustion as well. But I think the burnout is different. It's not the same as if you're like, I've been slogging at the same thing and it's okay. And like, maybe I get paid well, but I don't like it that much. Like this, I'm hoping then it will continue to fuel that fire even when you've had some tough days.
Absolutely. And I think that challenge is something that I didn't realize that I was craving. And
Yes.
if I were to look back 2 years and talk to Logan then and say, what are the things that you should know about, or if somebody new even, and not just me, if you're trying to get into a new industry or to move across, is to not forget the reason why you're going to do that. Like for me, I wanted to get into food because I wanted to have the passion meet the business, and I wanted my profession to be the art. And so while I'm definitely running into times where, finding a venue to host those kinds of things can be difficult, or selling tickets is not necessarily the thing that I expected to be doing all the time, you embrace those things and you start to realize as you take a step back that these things need to happen. They're necessary, and they can even become things that you appreciate of the kind of independent journey that anybody that goes into entrepreneurship and finds themselves on.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice you would give anyone who's looking to be an entrepreneur, whether it's in a culinary space or anything else?
Find your end goal and then focus every day on the minute things that are going to get you there. So to even take it a step back, keep one eye in the telescope and one eye in the microscope. You want to know what your long-term.
I've never heard that. I love that.
I'm sure that I read it somewhere at some point. I don't know where I got it, but it's been something that it helped me obviously through tech and through my career, and something that I think is definitely useful no matter what industry you're in. If you know where you want to go and you're looking through the telescope at that long-term goal, that 3 to 5 year plan, but can also marry that up with your day to day and understand how are these individual tasks actually getting me there? Or if they're not, what can I do to avoid spending time on these things that are not moving me towards my goal, is a piece of advice that I think that anybody that is trying to be a self-starter and trying to achieve goals can learn from.
Yeah. Excellently said. Oh my goodness. I think I'll put that on a post-it note for myself.
Yeah, I love it.
I feel that too with this podcast. I love doing it. I have so much joy, but I got to remember microscope versus telescope. And what are those tasks doing to push it forward? And not to get too hung up on either view. That might be
Right.
a part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, if you spend too much time looking at your long term, but you're not focusing on what you're doing day to day, it'll continue to be a dream. If you're only focusing on your day to day without that long term plan, you're going to find yourself kind of burning out and spinning out in a lot of different directions. So, yeah, marrying the two together and finding that balance is key.
Amazing. Logan, we're here. I can't believe it. This has honestly flown by. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about what you're working on and just your inspirations. A little reminder for everyone, this is called The Perfect Bite because it's a perfect bite of our folks across the value chain of food and everything they bring to us through their ventures, but also because we have our own perfect bites, our own unique taste buds, memories, recipes, something that we've eaten that we're never going to forget. So Logan, what is your perfect bite?
For me, nothing tastes better than nostalgia. So my perfect bite is going to be my Nona stuffed shells. It was the first gourmet dish that I ever had. It was the first thing from scratch I had ever had was her sauce. And so for me, when I think about food and when I think about last meal at Perfect Bites, it's got to be that. If I'm going to be forced to cook my own food, obviously I don't get the nostalgia there. We definitely are going to go with sourdough. Baking is something that, again, I took from my Nona. She is a multi-generation. Her mother did it. Her mother from in Italy sold it as well. And so for me, there's a lot of history that goes into that bread baking. And so if I'm not getting the stuffed shells, I'm definitely going to be eating some bread.
Oh, grazie, Nona. We love you. Thank you. Thank you for giving Logan his inspiration. This has been incredible, Logan. Can you let listeners know where they can find you? So your social media, website, and any upcoming events and venues that we're going to find you at in Cleveland.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Chef Logan, northcoastculinary.com as well. We are planning on doing a large number of pop-ups. So I'm in the process right now of planning out 3 different tiers. We're going to have a 12-course dinner that goes for 2.5 hours. We're going to have a 6-course dinner that goes for 60 minutes. And then we're going to do a pasta omakase that is even shorter than that. So over the course of the next couple of months, you'll definitely start to see more venues get announced and more ticketed events start to pop up. And so following me through social media is going to be the quickest and easiest way for you to stay up to date on any of the new projects that we're working on here.
Sounds good. So everyone make sure to follow because these sell out really quickly too. Logan, thank you again so much for your time and your stories, your wisdom. And everyone, thanks for joining us on The Perfect Bite. This was Logan Neisel's Perfect Bite.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.